Welcome once again to HeroQuestFans. So this is not a live video. This is just me wanting to kind of condense my thoughts and a lot of the house rules or homebrew rules, whatever you want to call them, that I've developed and many of which I use regularly on my Twitch stream on HeroQuestFans. So we're going to go through these, and if it's you want to skip around, go ahead. If you want to play this on high speed, hey, I understand. So thanks for watching us. Thanks for supporting us. We do stream most weekends. Fridays, we've tended to do 2 to 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Saturdays, 6 to 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. That may change, but we will post on twitch.tv/HeroQuestFans as that changes. So here we go, talking about house rules. And I'll just go ahead and lay out the outline. I'm usually not this organized, so please enjoy. First, we've got general tweaks. These are just little small rules that we tend to apply to most quests that we play. Wrestling moves, uncommon feats, the upgrade system, and Twitch Gold for Zargon or heroes. So we'll just kind of go through them one at a time here. And of course, if you want to post comments, ask questions, I could even just redo the video if people have more questions than answered. So I have no problem, first of all, if people have their own house rules. I think it's one of the greatest things about HeroQuest, besides making up your own brand new adventures, is that everybody plays the game a little differently. You may have started playing it, in the late 80s, early 90s, and you play it a certain way, and that just feels most natural to you. But then you go to someone else's table and their Zargon or their Morcar or their Grimdead, their GM player, plays a little differently. Some people like to change the rules to make certain portions of the game more realistic. Some people try to make certain parts of the game more cinematic. I mean, there's all kinds of different things. Sometimes they want the game to be simpler. Other times they want the game to be more complex. And I have no problem with that. I encourage it. I may disagree with you on a certain point of a rule, but I'm not going to make a fuss about it at the table. I'll just accept that that's how you play. And so I think that attitude, I think if enough people have that, then everything goes great. I mean, it's just common courtesy, that you don't do rules lawyering at the table. You hash that out in between on forums and chat rooms and stuff like that. Get your feedback, but once it's time to play, just make sure everybody's on board, make sure everybody's on the same page, and go for it. So, general tweaks. These are really, really simple. I'm just going to show you what these are. So on the screen here, you can see I've got my HeroQuest board. So I've got some heroes here. All right, just to kind of show you. So let's just give an example of something, a general tweak. So this is the Alchemist bench, or this is one version of the Alchemist bench. Let's say you've got a hero, comes into the room, there's no monsters, he could search for treasure, right? You've got your treasure deck of treasure cards. You'd normally draw a card, right? Well, what I do is I'll say if it's let's say a magic user character, whatever you want to call it, let's say the elf or the wizard. Let's say one of them wants to search the room, but instead of drawing a treasure card, I'll give them the option, assuming that there's no note in the quest book. So you look in the quest book, it doesn't give a special treasure there. They can decide to, what would they do? Well, I would say, you've got this sorcerer's table here. It's got like a book on there. The idea would be the elf could choose to restore one of his previously used spells. Just one. So let's say he's already used up Heal Body in the quest. When he searches for treasure, he just restores that spell one time, just once per quest. Okay? Then the wizard could come in. Let's say he's used Tempest already. He wants to restore that. He could restore it. Now, what I've also chosen to say is, well, what's the difference between the elf and the wizard in this case? Well, let's say the wizard already has all of his spells. He hasn't used any of them yet. When he searches the room, the unmarked sorcerer's table for treasure, and he decides he wants to quote unquote restore a spell, I would actually give him a new spell. So I would let him draw a random spell scroll or alchemist item. So he would actually get an extra one. Whereas the elf, I wouldn't do that. And I reasoned that the wizard is a little more knowledgeable. He's able to cobble together the materials and create that. So that's an example. Another one would be, let's say you've got a room down here with an alchemist bench, and there's no note, no special treasure in that room. And these magic using heroes want to search for treasure, but instead of drawing from the treasure deck, they want to search the alchemist bench. So what I would allow in this case is either one of these magic type heroes, instead of drawing a treasure card, they could choose to draw a potion card. And for that, I use, this is just one of many, but this is one that I found on Yield In to print out. I believe Sheng is the one who created this one originally. Potions deck. And the cards in this deck are, the vast majority of them are just taken from the official quests. So all the different expansions, and they're just an example. So let's say he draw a random card. Oh, it's a potion of healing. Great. And then the rule here says 200 gold coins. In between quests, he could say, well, I want to buy some extra copies of this one. So that's a general tweak. Now, not all furniture has to be interactive, but I reasoned that this is what I want to do. It's disappointing when you see some awesome piece of furniture and oh, it's just regular, you know, just run of the mill. Draw a card, because that's what you do when there's no special treasure. You're supposed to draw a card. Let's say you get a weapons rack. Whenever you see one of these, you think, wow, it's going to be a cool weapon, right? A lot of times it's not even marked. So what I've decided is any hero is in the room, and here I would allow every hero to do it, not just one. So with the magic, with the alchemist bench or sorcerer's table, I'm treating it as only the magic using heroes could do it. Does that mean like a druid or a warlock or a bard? Maybe, maybe. Are they as advanced? Are they able to kind of figure it out? You know, the wizard is an alchemist after all, and the elf is like a lower level alchemist. Well, let's say the heroes want to search. There's no note, no special note in the quest text for the weapons rack. Instead of just drawing a treasure card, they can instead choose to draw an equipment card. And I printed these out. The European version of HeroQuest uses equipment cards, whereas the North American does not. However, the remake, the HeroQuest remake, uses equipment cards very similar to these. And these are just all of the things from the armory that you can buy. Now, I did pull the potions out. So these are just weapons, armor, toolkit, that sort of thing. But I do have some extra things in here. So let's say you want to search the weapons rack for an equipment card. You draw here. Oh, look, it's a helmet. And I even put on here, you know, how much you would get for selling it and who can use it. So there's that. Now you might ask yourself, well, are these searches always safe? Well, the way I've been playing it, they're safe. They're always safe. There's no bad cards in any of these decks. But I have seen people who have printed bad cards. So when you draw a card here, it would just say ruined equipment. It's like, oh, this piece of equipment you found is so rusted, so broken and damaged that it's completely useless. So you just waste your time. It's like getting nothing. With the potions, I've seen poison cards. So a poison card could be, you know, you taste the potion, but it has a chance of doing damage, taking away a body point or a mind point. Now, I do other things, and I'll explain. I use these decks in other instances as well, but we'll just move on from that. So that's the third example of an interactive piece of furniture. Now, Avalon Hill themselves have kind of done this a bit because some of the official quests, you know, they'll put a treasure chest in a room, but they won't put any note there. It's like, well, the treasure chest is supposed to be like a sign that there's probably something in there. It's probably some special thing. I mean, yes, there are empty treasure chests, so it'll say the chest is empty. So, okay, fine. Or it'll say there's a trap, but there's no other treasure. It's like, okay, well, fine. But sometimes they'll just put a treasure chest with nothing. There's no mention of it. There's no little letter next to it in the quest map. That's a mistake. Because the actual rule would be then, if there's no note, you're supposed to draw a treasure card if someone searches for treasure in the room when there's no monsters. Well, what Avalon Hill did when they remade the ElfQuest pack, the Mage of the Mirror, they just said, well, if you ever encounter an unmarked treasure chest, Zargon can allow the heroes to just simply collect 200 gold coins. The first hero who searches gets 200 gold coins, and it's considered elven riches. Or maybe you'd say every search, because all 4 heroes can search the room in the North American or remake rules. So maybe every single one of them could get 200 gold coins from that. That's pretty cool. But they did go through and they actually assigned treasure to every single treasure chest you find. So they corrected their own mistake, but that was probably just a placeholder. But it's a nice idea. It's to say, well, you get something. A treasure chest is guaranteed to be something, or it'll just be empty. There's something that will happen differently than just I just drew a card. Now it's true in the European rules, the treasure deck does have a nothing card, a card where you actually find nothing. So if you've modified your treasure deck like I have, there it is, you could put, despite a thorough search, you find nothing. So when you search for treasure, is there going to be something dangerous like a wandering monster or a hazard? This is the remake deck, of course. Or could it be poison, like one of these expansions? This is from, wait a minute. Yeah, that's poison. Oh, that's from, yeah, this is from Rise of the Dread Moon. Because I was going to say there's no way to lose mind points in Mage of the Mirror remake. Well, anyway, so those are the general tweaks that I use. Also, what I'll do, well, there's a few more, I should say. What I've also tended to do is that, after the first quest or so, like the heroes have maybe 1 or 2 quests under their belt already, I'll start giving out bonus potions. So the wizard or the alchemist and the elf, I reason, can craft their own potions. So between quests, I'll let them draw cards from this potions deck, and it'll always be a safe card, no poisons or taking damage between quests. So the wizard will get to draw 2 cards, and the elf will only get to draw 1. Now you might say, well, with the remake rules or the North American rules, it's like Potion Hoarder Edition. Of course, some of these potions you could immediately trade it in for money. You could buy more. The old editions of HeroQuest really didn't say you could sell potions because they weren't considered equipment. They were just either considered treasure, which in the European rules you would lose them at the end of the quest. North American, you'd keep them. Or they would be just in the alchemist shop. So once you buy a potion, you've got it forever until you use it up or die and lose it. Whereas in the remake edition, potions are considered equipment. And equipment can be sold back to the armory between quests or to the underground hideout in the case of Rise of the Dread Moon, assuming they list it for sale. You would sell equipment back for half price. So let's say you bought something for 100 gold, like a staff. You decide to sell it back to the armory, you get 50 gold back. That's the standard rule. It's a standard North American rule. But in the remake, they've added potions to this. So a potion that costs 200 gold, you could sell it back for 100 gold, even though you haven't used it at all. It just is. So there could be a lot of ways to get rid of potions, but also a lot of ways to get extra gold from them. So at least it's worth something to somebody. But anyway, there's that. So moving on to the next section after the tweaks. Oh, I should say, before I get to that, the unthreatened movement that Avalon Hill talks about, which I kind of like, they suggested and they shared, this is how they do it in playtesting. They get their red movement dice, let's say. You get your movement dice. The rule is you're supposed to roll them every time to move. And yes, in some games we've decided, well, if a character wants to move like 1 square, well, he doesn't have to roll because he's guaranteed to at least get 1. Because if you're wearing plate mail, for example, you only roll 1 red die. So you have a chance to get 1 to 6. So you're guaranteed to get 1. Now, if you roll 2d6, which most heroes would do, you're guaranteed to get at least 2. So if you're normally rolling 2 dice, maybe someone will say, hey, I just want to move 2 squares. That's it. You don't have to roll. But with the unthreatened movement, what Avalon Hill, makers of the remake, they suggested that if you're like a 1 die hero, you should be able to just, if there's no monsters on the board, you can guaranteed move 4 squares. If you don't want to roll, you can just say I do 4 squares. And if you're a 2 die hero, you do move 8. So for each d6 that you roll, they give you 4 movement guaranteed automatically. So that's one way to do it. Now, when I do the unthreatened movement, I don't do the 4 per die thing. I just do the full thing. So if you're a 1 die hero, I just say you can move 6. And if you're a 2 die hero, you can move 12. Now, in practice, what happens is the heroes will tend to run into monsters or run into traps in short order. You don't have to move your full movement, of course. But there's 2 ways to handle it. Well, what happens once monsters appear on the board? So, you get, let's say an orc appears or something. You go around a corner and you reveal an orc. Uh-oh. Now what do I do? Well, there's 2 ways. One is kind of the way Space Crusade handles it. Space Crusade's a really awesome game, by the way. Also by Milton Bradley Hasbro from 1990. Also known as Dark West in Germany and other places. In that game, you have fixed movement. Okay. The idea would be with using that kind of Space Crusade inspired rule is once you get into sight of a monster, or once a monster appears on the board, you take whatever movement you've already done with the free movement, the unthreatened movement, and you subtract it from what you're about to roll on the dice. So let's say the dwarf moved 1, 2, or let's say he moved into the room. So he moved 1. This isn't exactly how it would go, but let's say whatever. The monster didn't appear until he'd already moved 3 squares. Okay, so now he needs to roll his dice. Okay, so he got a 4. So subtract 3, you've got 1 left. So he can move 1 more. Oh, he can't move enough to actually attack him. The more generous way to do it is to just say, as soon as monsters appear on the board, now you've got to roll if you want to keep moving. So let's say he moved 11 squares and he saw the orc. Uh-oh. Now he's got to roll. Okay, he got 3. So he can move 3 more squares, 1, 2, and attack him. See that? So I added the roll onto it. So there's different ways to handle that, but so far this is the way I've been doing it. I've been the most generous. So you can move 12 squares as soon as monsters appear on the board. Whatever hero it is, he has to roll, and then he can add that to his, or from now on, that's going to be his movement. So maybe he would have he would have moved 12. He moves 1 square, the monster appears. Okay, normally he'd have 11 left. He rolls. Okay, he got 6. Okay, now he can move 6, not 6 plus whatever he had left. Get it? So there's different ways to do it, but that's kind of what I've been doing. So as soon as monsters appear on the board, stop, roll your movement dice. Whatever you get, you can move up to that amount. So those are the general tweaks. I think I've got them all. If I think of some more, I'll just go ahead and toss those in. Next, we've got wrestling moves. Okay, what do I mean by that? So again, let me get out the combat dice and show you. So typically, when you attack, you roll dice, right? You roll these combat dice, and skulls are hits when you're attacking, and everything else is a miss. When you're defending, when a hero defends, these white shields are blocks. So every white shield blocks a skull, right? And if monsters are defending, the black shield, or the bunny of immortal evil, whatever you want to call it, that blocks a skull. Now, when a hero defends, he rolls white shields. Well, the idea behind the wrestling moves is, I thought, okay, in the Frozen Horror, I was looking at the draft notes trying to modify it because it's such a difficult expansion. Some would say broken in terms of its difficulty because they didn't play test it adequately. The idea behind the Yeti grabs you in a hug attack, and there's no way to escape. And you just keep taking damage until you or the Yeti dies, right? Well, what the draft note idea was, originally they said, once you're in the hold, you can roll 2 dice, and okay, he got nothing, but 1 white shield would mean no damage that round, that turn, until the next turn. That's considered a round, even though they don't use the term round. And if he got 2 white shields, he breaks out of it. Well, the way I started playing is I said, well, he gets to roll 3 dice. So 1 shield would be no damage, 2 would be break out of it, 3 would be a wrestling move. Like you reverse the reverse the hold and do an automatic body point of damage to the monster. Like he doesn't get to defend against it. He gets a body point of damage, a skull. Okay? And you're free. But then I thought, well, what if I apply that to the rest of the game? So it gets kind of interesting. So let's say you're attacking a monster, you're rolling a bunch of dice. Somehow you've got 6 dice. I prefer to roll on a dice box or whatever, but okay, so he got 2 skulls. That's his normal attack. The monster would defend with 3. Oh, but look at this. He got 1, 2, 3, 4 white shields. It's pretty rare, pretty hard to do. So I reasoned anytime you get 3 or more white shields on an attack or on a defense, doesn't matter, either one, you get to do a wrestling move. And at first I just said, well, tell me your favorite wrestling move. But not everybody is necessarily a fan of professional wrestling just because it was popular in the 80s. Not every kid watched it. Or maybe you just, you can't really think of on the fly a really cool move. So we've got this other game, this WWF or WWE Royal Rumble card game from Ravensburger. It's not sponsored. They actually have a deck of cards. I got this game very cheaply, and Jacer actually turned me onto this. It's like, why not use assets from other games? So it's got all these moves. You don't have to do this, but spear, the flying, this drop, running power slam, jackknife power bomb, ankle lock. So it's just kind of funny to imagine that, oh, you got him in the ankle lock, and then he takes a body point of damage. So that's the idea behind wrestling moves. You get a really a bunch of shields. You get to do a guaranteed hit. Now the same thing could happen though when the monster is attacking or defending. What if the monster gets, which is even harder to do, 3 or more black shields? Now the monster is going to do some damage to you. So maybe he does a choke slam or something, body slam, and now you've taken a hit of damage. Now what if both characters get rolls? So you rolled 3 white or 3 white shields, and you got 1 skull, so he still gets to defend, right? So he rolls his 3, and oh look, he got 3 black shields. Well, you get to do a wrestling move, and he gets to do a wrestling move. So they cancel each other out, no damage, nobody does anything. And you do see that in professional wrestling as well, in the scripted fights where one person tries to do their move and the other person does their move, and they both just kind of like cancel each other out. Nobody does anything. And it's just kind of a comical kind of moment. So anyway, those are the wrestling moves. I know not everybody likes wrestling, not everybody appreciates that, but I think it's fun. Most of my players appreciate it. It's just kind of a cool little thing, and it can make the combat that much more unexpected. Uncommon feats. So here's the next one, and this may be a little bit more controversial to those who prefer their games to be very, by the book. Of course, if you play raw, rules as written, you may not like any of these. But it introduces a little bit more role-playing light. I mean, Dungeons and Dragons is always lifted as the gold standard of role-playing games. But this is not Dungeons and Dragons, so this is HeroQuest. At the same time, there's a lot of things that you kind of wish you could do in games, but it's just not in the rules. So what I've decided is that, this is the classic example, is the jump up on the table to attack. So let's say, I don't know, I'm just going to make something up. So let's say you go into this room, and this it would never happen just like this, but let's say there's a monster here, and there's really no way to attack him. Maybe you're really supposed to go through this other door to fight him or something. But someone says, well, why can't I just jump up on the table and attack him? Why can't I do that? Well, the rules don't allow you. So I would say, well, you could attempt an uncommon feat. Oh, okay. What is that? Well, the uncommon feat is the player would propose something that's not normally allowed by the rules, but maybe plausible within the universe. And when I say plausible within the universe, I mean HeroQuest is obviously evoking other fiction, Lord of the Rings, Conan the Barbarian, um, other sword and sorcery, uh, types of movies or books or other comics, things like that, TV shows. And so you say, well, I see people swinging from chandeliers and jumping on tables all the time. Why couldn't I do something like that? So I'll say, okay, roll one combat die, one white combat die, and if it's a skull, then it succeeds. And usually at this point, Zargon should kind of come up with some idea of what he thinks what should happen. So let's say if it succeeds, you jump up on the table and you're allowed to attack the monster. But what happens if you fail? Well, maybe you just don't get to do your action that turn, or maybe you fall down and lose a turn, or maybe just nothing happens. You could still, okay, well, I'll do my action then. I'll walk around or something. I'll try to fire over the table. And that's another thing. Firing your crossbow across the table, normally you can't do that. So if it succeeds, maybe you fire and across the table and hit the monster. Or if it fails, maybe like the monster like ducked behind the table and dodged your attempt. But then you've got to roll your dice to see if you can actually attack him. Because just because you jumped up on the table or fired doesn't mean that your attack hit. So now you roll your attack dice. So okay, let's say he wants to jump up on the table. Okay, Zargon will allow it because Zargon could always say no. If it's going to break the quest, don't do it. A little insight into GMing here there. So you roll your die. Oh, it was a black shield, so he failed. So he didn't get on the table. But if it had been a skull, I'd let you do it. Now, the other thing that happens is occasionally, I mean, Zargon could do whatever he wants, right? The GM has total power. But at the same time, he doesn't want to make it completely unfair. Like it's just a foregone conclusion that the heroes are just going to lose and be humiliated. It's like, is that really fun for the group? So you kind of got to take that into consideration. But let's say somehow he reveals the room, but the monster is trapped inside. The monster can't get out because monsters normally can't open doors. At that point, it's kind of a cheat because now the heroes can just avoid the room. The monster never gets out. Well, you could attempt a villainous feat. So the monster moves up to the door, tries to batter down the door. Like the monster can smell you, he can hear you making all that noise out there. He's going to try to batter down the door. So again, he rolls his die. Oh, it's a black shield. He failed. So the monster was not able to batter down the door. But what if he got a skull? Okay, now the door opens. Now the monster is able to get out. Now this could be abused, so Zargon should be very careful what he does with villainous feats. He sets off a bomb and kills all the heroes. But if you see the heroes maybe exploiting the rules and you don't want to just shut them down, you could have like an in-universe way to kind of get around it. Another limitation I would put on this sort of thing is to say only one uncommon feat per turn, because otherwise it becomes a common feat. You're just doing it constantly. Or at a certain point, just say, well, you just can't do that anymore. You've been jumping up on tables so much, you're just too tired. You can't do it. This table's really slippery. It's not going to work for a while. Just kind of a subtle way of saying you've been doing this too much. We're not going to do this anymore. Okay. I should go back to my tweaks again. Okay, another general tweak is I use these combat cards. These were created by Ron Schertz. You can find them on Yield In, actually specifically on Phoenix's page. Phoenix. Or HeroQuest by Phoenix.yieldin.com. So we've got hero combat cards, chaos combat cards. How do you use these? Well, one way to do it is to say the pure combat characters, this is a way to enhance them. So you've got your dwarf, you've got your barbarian. They're the only heroes that don't have any spells, they don't have any skill cards, they don't have anything. It's just fighting. And a lot of people prefer that actually. So some would say, well, this makes them more complicated. But be that as it may, if you want, at the start of the quest, you say, okay, each character gets one card. So you get a random card. Okay, slip. So that allows you to move past monsters. That's kind of cool. There's 18 of these. Oh, keen hearing. Okay, you can go up to a thing and hear it. It's like, okay, that's cool. The way I do it though is I will say between at the beginning of each quest, so you refresh these every quest. So if you don't use them up, you lose them, and you have to draw new cards the next time. So they're single use only. Some of them can be used off turn. They don't have to be used on your turn. It doesn't count as an action in a lot of cases. A lot of times it's just an enhancement to your attack or movement. They're kind of like the order cards in Space Crusade, but not exactly because they're keyed to a specific character and not to the entire group necessarily. But the way I do it is I'll say the barbarian gets 2 and the dwarf gets 2. Okay. Now what about the chaos cards? Well, the way the Ron Shirts rules go is the heroes each get 2 and then Zargon gets 4. I have played it where all 4 heroes get 2 cards, but after a while it's kind of like they have so many cards to handle, it kind of gets a little unwieldy. But Zargon gets 4. Well, why does he get 4? The idea is 2, 2, 2, 2. So it's the same. So if I were giving these guys each 1, I would give Zargon 2. If I were giving them 3 each for a total 6, then he would get 6. Now, the way we actually play on the streams is a little bit different, and I'll get to more of that as we talk about the last section. But I decided not to give myself any of these chaos cards until someone in the Twitch chat buys them. That is, they use their channel points, their gold coins on the Twitch live stream. That is, people who are not controlling heroes are kind of lurking in the chat. They can use those gold coins, which build up over time, to buy a skill card for one of the heroes. They could buy a chaos card for Zargon. They could buy one of these, um, evil wizard cards. And I'll get to that in a moment here. So once the heroes have kind of progressed a while, they're going to be pretty strong. So I'll start introducing more rules to kind of make it a little more interesting, a little more challenging, throw things up in the air a little bit, add some more variety. So this other general tweak is the evil wizard deck or the Zargon deck. And I know some people will say, well, that's Mentor. That's not Zargon. Well, for me, growing up, we always thought that was Zargon. That was the evil wizard on the GM screen. So that's what we use. The idea behind this deck is when there's no monsters on the board, there's nothing for Zargon to do, right? So at a certain point, I like to I'll print out a little card that has the rules on it too, put it with the deck. The idea would be if there's no monsters on the board, Zargon gets to draw one of these. So kind of similar to Space Crusade because they have an alien event deck. So I'll draw one of these and it could be, the monsters switch places, one of the furniture turns into a mimic, one of the mercenaries turns evil, there's a trap, wandering monster appears. There's all kinds of just fun things. And when he gets to the end of this deck, he reshuffles it and it's available again. Also, when he draws one of these cards, he may use the card immediately, or he may just kind of keep it in his hand. He doesn't show it to the players until it's used. He could have up to 3 in his hand at a time. And when he gets the next card, he either has to use that one immediately, discard one of these and put it in his hand, or use one of the existing ones so that he can put it in. But most of that's behind the scenes. Now, I wouldn't do this on the very first quest. I probably wouldn't do it until the heroes are kind of at a certain level of experience. But another way that you can use these Evil Wizard cards, and this is also by Sheng on Yield In, and I've just modified them slightly in a few places, is I will just say on the Twitch streams, I don't use these except when they've gotten to a certain level, I will draw one every turn. But then when there's no monsters on the board. But also the people in the Twitch chat can buy one of these for me. And again, those gold coins are free. When you follow, you get a certain amount. When you subscribe, which does cost money, you can use your Amazon Prime Gaming monthly thing for Twitch. And I'm not saying that to advertise, but just to let you know, is that you get a multiplier. So people that do that, they do get a lot more coins. but you never know who's going to show up. Some people will try to help the good guys, some will help the bad guys, some will do both, and a lot of people will just kind of sit there. But when you're controlling a hero, you're not participating in the Twitch chat that way. So you're building up all this gold. So when it's your time to just kind of pop in the stream, you could all of a sudden have a big influence. And not to worry, the way that that gold redemption, which I'll explain more, there are limits to that. So it's not just unlimited. Okay, so we've covered wrestling moves, uncommon feats. And we've already begun talking about this. So on Twitch, I play HeroQuest on Twitch for the most part. Most of the time, we are playing live on Twitch, and so you have people that join in the chat. They may be watching, they may be commenting, but those players have the ability by clicking on the chat. Right below the chat, it'll say rewards or viewer rewards and shows a little icon showing some gold. I have a little short video about it that I post on the channel. Anyway, you can click there, and then there's a whole list of things that you can spend your channel points on. So if you have 300 of them, there's a lot of things that are 100 or maybe a little less that you could spend it on. And you could buy a skill card for the heroes. You know, just say, okay, yeah, I want to buy a skill card for the barbarian. So I just draw one of these randomly. Or I want to buy a chaos card for Zargon. I want to buy a threat card for Zargon. I want to get an equipment card for the heroes, for the elf. So you draw one. A random potion for a hero. Any hero, let the GM decide, or I want it to go to the wizard. So those are all things we use there. Now, there's also an upgrade system, and I didn't put a outline thing for that, but the upgrade system is a little more complicated, so I didn't want to spend the entire video talking about it. But the way I've done it is inspired by the old European rule, which is that after 3 tasks are completed, that is 3 quests have been completed, you're considered a champion. And in the original version of HeroQuest from 1989, the idea was you complete 3 quests, you become a champion, unless you steal Prince Magnus's gold. There's one way that you could forfeit that ability. You get a reward of 500 gold coins, which is pretty awesome. So you get 500 extra gold to spend. What else? Any other perks? Nope. In the second edition in Europe, you become a champion, but you don't get the gold reward. And in the North American version, the only champion you become is if you defeat the Witch Lord, so you got to complete 14 quests. So I decided that I would introduce a basic leveling system. So a lot of other fantasy games have leveling systems, experience points, but it gets kind of unwieldy. It's kind of hard to follow. Video games do it. So I just thought, well, if you complete 3 quests, you become a champion. Unless they were super easy quests, then maybe I'd make it 5. You become a champion, you get certain perks for your character type. They don't use the term character class like in D&D, but that's kind of what it is. So I'll just give you some examples. So the barbarian, after he completes 3 quests, well, of course, he gets to start drawing the combat cards. He'll get 2 of them. Maybe he won't get them in the very first quest. Also, he will have the ability to roll 2 black dice, substitute 2 black dice when he's using any sword. So normally, you just use the white dice, right? So these German dice, there's a guy in Germany, Spiel Orange Saloon, again, not meant as an advertisement, but he sells these dice, and they've just changed the faces on the dice. So normally there's 3 skulls, 2 white shields, and 1 black shield. Well, as you can see from these dice, it's been changed. He's added an extra skull by subtracting a white shield. So when you're attacking, if you use these black dice, there's a greater chance that you're going to get skulls. So it's actually, it simulates maybe his weapon skill has increased. So I would say for a champion barbarian, he can, if he's using a sword, so he's using the broadsword, it's normally 3 dice, I'll allow him to substitute 2 black dice. So now that's what he'd be rolling. Otherwise, everything's the same. Now, if he uses a battle axe, that's not a sword, so it would just be the 4 white. What else happens? Well, when he has completed a total of 10 quests or more, 10 tasks, he becomes a knight. Not a knight like the commander of the Guardian Knights, but he's a knight. Now, in the North American Hero Quest, it does say when you defeat the Witch Lord, you will become champions and dubbed Imperial Knights or Knights of the Realm, whatever. Well, I decided that yes, you still get, at champion level, you get the 500 gold, but then in the Barbarian's case, he gets this perk of having these 2 black dice with any sword. When he becomes a knight, what does he get? Well, now, with any sword or axe, he will get 3 black dice that he can substitute if he wants. So if he's using a broadsword, now he's rolling 3 black dice. Very powerful. And I decided instead of getting 2 combat cards, he'll get 3. And on top of that, because you're thinking, gee, wow, he's really OP now, right? Well, my original idea was we were going to work our way towards playing the Mage of the Mirror and Frozen Horror at the end after we played all these other official expansions. And so it was going to be extremely difficult. So the heroes would be very powerful and ready to face that challenge. We wouldn't have to modify the quests to make them easier, so that it wouldn't be just total party kill after total party kill. So he gets 3 black dice, and he also gets a random combat potion. Now we said combat potion. I'm talking about like heroic brew, potion of strength, potion of defense, frost skin, battle rage, potion of battle, that sort of thing. So I just kind of grabbed those out of the potions deck or the treasure deck and just give him one, just randomly at the start of the quest. So the idea was, hey, the strength of the barbarian and what's fun about him is he's just a total combat guy. He's just, a tank. He's a combat monster. He's really, really powerful. Well, what are some other things? So when you're the wizard, well, what does the wizard get? Well, I decided that when he uses the wizard staff or the alchemist staff, he can substitute 2 black dice for that instead of just the normal 2. And he's wearing the wizard's cloak or alchemist cloak. He can substitute a green die for defense. So along with his white dice, he'll be rolling one of these green dice. Well, what's different about the green dice? Well, with this one, they took away one of the skulls and put an extra white die. So it's an extra chance of defense. So he'll be rolling his white dice. Normally, the wizard doesn't get a lot of defense. So normally he gets 2 defense, and then he adds the wizard's cloak. It's 3, but he's a champion. So I'll use a green die. So greater chance of rolling a white die. Well, there he didn't get any. So it's not a guarantee. It's just a little bit better. So what other things? Well, again, after a quest or so, I would allow the elf and the wizard to both start searching the unmarked alchemist benches and sorcerer's tables for treasure. Now, Rise of the Dread Moon does add the alchemist deck and all those kind of searching rules. So in a sense, it's like maybe a competing and rival version of my rules, but I just kind of take that into consideration. If we're playing the Rise of the Dread Moon quests, I'll still let them do this. That doesn't change. I mean, these systems I've come up with are pretty much compatible with the existing official quests. Now, of course, if you designed your own quest pack that maybe this would like break, you don't have to use it, of course. I would just disallow it. So, for example, when we played Rogar's Hall, a lot of these things we didn't use. We didn't use the extra combat cards or threat cards. My treasure deck is quite big. You can see I've added many more cards to it. So I've added cards from the North American, European, and some of the expansions in here. But if I'm playing a certain quest pack, I may take some of them out just because it's getting overstuffed. So I won't use the Frozen Horror treasure cards in Mage of the Mirror. But everybody has their own idea of how that should go. Should you just combine all your expansions into one when you play? Or should you maybe, as you enter a new expansion, you unlock those new cards and just add them to the pile? Or do you take the ones out from the previous expansion you've already finished and only use the ones that you're playing at the time? It's different philosophies. Thus far, I've just kind of looked at the expansion, kind of tried to gauge the difficulty, and then I just stick to the assets for that particular expansion plus the game system. Unless I think it's really broken and they need extra help, then I'll maybe put some extra things in there. That's kind of how my philosophy is. Because I'm the type of Zargon, I mean, everybody has their own philosophy of it. Some people will play with the idea that the heroes have to win. Like, they have to win, and my job is just to make sure they have a good time. That's one way to play. I don't play like that. I am trying to kill the heroes. But once in a while, it'll just kind of feel like the game was unfair. The game was kind of broken, like someone made a mistake somewhere, and you could destroy the heroes, and I'll just make a judgment call and say, you know what, I'll give them one more chance. We'll just see if there's some way they can get out of this. Maybe make a suggestion. Well, why don't you try an uncommon feat here? Maybe you can do something. And if I mean I'm not going to force it, so they may still lose. Okay, that's how it goes sometimes. You know what I mean? And if you're playing with a group, the group may say, "Well, I want you to take the gloves off. I want this to be a knockdown drag out fight." But I don't take that as, okay, so Zargon should fix it so that the heroes cannot win. Like they're guaranteed to lose. I feel like Unmodified, the 1992 Frozen Horror, and to a large extent the remake version as well, if you don't count Into the Northlands, is the deck is stacked very much against the heroes. It overcompensates for the fact that the game system is fairly easy for adults who are like working together, who maybe have experience with these types of games and they play really smart. Whereas the Frozen Horror and Mage of the Mirror, to a slightly lesser extent, those are very much stacked against the heroes. It's too far in the other direction. It's so hard that most players are going to be very frustrated and they're not going to be having much of a good time. So, one way to fix that is to just start removing monsters, start removing traps, or you can do like I generally did, which is pile on these extra perks and ideas. So, what else did I give the wizard? Well, I also said that in addition to those searching effects and there's those modifications to his special artifacts. Well, at night level, I decided he can do even more things. So maybe he can summon elementals by sacrificing 3 fire spells, and he can get a fire elemental, which is a really powerful creature that can just plow through enemies for a certain number of turns. Can't be destroyed except by another elemental or certain spells. We haven't really gotten to that level yet. And I was kind of hesitant at first because I thought, well, this is really fun sounding, but would it really be fun? Because what if the players just totally exploit that and destroy everything? But then I thought, well, there's some bad guys that have a lot of spells too, so maybe I would bring those bad guys in to kind of compensate. I mean, because you think about video games, well, what happens in video games? A lot of times you get some superpower, you can just wipe out all the easy enemies, but then you get to the bad guy who's the boss, who's able to go toe to toe with you. So it kind of nullifies the advantage. But for a while, you can really kick some tail. So kind of working on that a little bit. But the wizard is a character that's hard for a lot of people to play because he has a lot more complexity. A lot of people choose the barbarian specifically because they just want to do treasure and fight. That's it. Don't have to worry about a lot of cards. Don't have to manage a lot of things. The dwarf, he gets to disarm traps. That's pretty cool. The elf gets a few spells, and you can see that Avalon Hill added more heroes. You know, they gave you the bard and the bard. He's got 3 spells. The warlock has 3 spells. The druid. Do I have the druid here? Okay, I'm not sure what I did with the druid, but the druid has 3 spells. The knight has 3 skills. The rogue has 3 skills. But they're all kind of variations on a theme. I mean, the rogue is very different. Then you get because his are like kind of always active. You don't have to choose to use them. But then you get the monk. This is the proxy I've used for the monk. I've got another one on order, an official one, because I gifted the one I had. The monk has a bunch of powers that he can just kind of use and refresh. Now, these new Avalon Hill creations from the Mythic tier, they always have one spell that they can keep getting back if they fulfill certain conditions. The Rogue never loses his. So figuring out upgrades for these new heroes has been kind of a challenge. But some of the things we've come up with, so the Knight, like when he's got a shield, he can substitute one green die for defense. Also, if he's fighting the wandering monster of the quest, so the same type of monster as the wandering monster to the quest, let's say it's a skeleton. So every time he fights a skeleton, he can substitute a black die when fighting that monster. Or let's say it's a polar warbear. Well, he gets an extra black die, or he substitutes a black die. So let's say he would normally roll 3 dice. He's got a broadsword. It's 3 white dice. He's fighting the wandering monster of the quest. He can substitute a black die, so he's got 2 white, 1 black. That's an example. Okay, but let's see, the dwarf, I really wanted him to be able to disarm traps easier or better, but he already does it incredibly well. I mean, you roll 1 die, anything but a black shield, and you've disarmed it. And I thought, well, as a champion, I can make it so that he disarms the trap automatically. That seems a little OP. So I thought, well, how about he just gets a greater chance of disarming it? Well, but how can you get a greater chance? So what I decided was he can have the ability to disarm a pit trap or falling block trap after it's already happened, which normally in the North American version he can't do. Now there's a few quests where the falling block trap is supposed to fall to separate the heroes and it's part of the storyline. So Zargon should look very carefully before he allows that to happen. But in other situations, it's just an annoyance. Like, oh, we've got this pit trap here. The dwarf can try to disarm it like any other trap, and he can remove the pit trap. In Legacy of Sorasil, the computer game, they actually had the ability where you would buy, instead of a toolkit, you'd buy like a repair kit, and you would actually like nail some boards down over the pit trap, making a bridge so that the other heroes could cross. So I might do that as well. Just say, okay, well, the other heroes could buy a repair kit, maybe for like 150 gold, so they could just cover up a pit trap without the dwarf. But otherwise, it would do the same thing. So with the falling block trap, the idea would be it would be like instead of like a pickaxe or something to chip away at it. I mean, maybe he has one, so he could try. He fails. He could try again. He could keep trying. Because with the pit trap, if you fail, you fall in. It's dangerous. Whereas the falling block trap, you try, you fail, you didn't get through it. But eventually he gets through it. Well, maybe for the other heroes, it would be like a detonation charge, like a little explosive that could only blow that chunk of rock away. So if you fail, you might get hurt by that, you know. But if you succeed, you get rid of the block. So I'm still kind of working on that. These are kind of works in progress. Now for the elf, I wanted to give him more magic. So what did I do? For his champion upgrade, I decided that he would not just have 3 spells, he would have a 4th one. But for the 4th one, it would either be, let's say he has one of the elemental groups. So he's got the 3 water. Well, instead of getting a 4th water, because there isn't one, unless I make one, is that he would get a random spell scroll. Spell scroll could be anything. Could be, taken from the other expansions. So maybe it's, Fire of Wrath, maybe it's Tempest, maybe it's Pass Through Rock. He could either get the random spell scroll, or he could get a random elf spell. So for Mage of the Mirror, you have the 8 elf spells. I made a 9th one from the cutting room floor, from the draft notes. So there's 9 of them. But instead of picking like 3 elf spells, like a lot of people are reluctant to pick elf spells. They prefer the elemental, either water or earth, because those have healing in them. So he could have, let's say, 3 of an elemental and 1 elf spell, or he could have 4 elf spells, but the 4th one would be random. Or he could have 3 elemental and a spell scroll, or he could have 3 elf and a spell scroll. So I would let the hero choose. But thus far, the way we've done it is he gets 1 elemental group and 1 elf spell. And I've actually allowed the heroes to choose so far. So we've had Glasgow Gargoyle has been playing as the elf quite a bit, and he would choose, like, let's say the earth spells and then in Hypnotic Blaze. It's a pretty good advantage. Now when he gets to a night level, what would he get? He would actually get 2 extra. So either 2 extra elf spells or 2 extra spell scrolls. So for a total 5. So pretty good. Okay. And for these other heroes, I mean, we haven't used them very much, so I don't have a very firm list of rules. Now for the um, monk, we do have a couple things. So he does these unarmed attacks that are 2 dice. So I just was deciding, well, he can use black dice when he's attacking unarmed. So 2 black dice instead of 2 white. That's pretty powerful. Or maybe when he's using a weapon, he could use a purple die. So he's using a staff. It's just 1 die. Well, he can use a purple die. Now, purple dice, again, these are custom. There's different versions of the purple and the orange. So if you bought these from somebody on Etsy or Spiel Warren Saloon or whatever from like before 2008, I think, 2006 or 2008. If you bought it before that, it's going to have different distributions of dice than after that, or like 2014. I think 2014 is when Spiel Warren Saloon started selling them again. So they may have changed between like 2008 or 2006 and this time. But anyway, there's a skull, a double skull. So you roll that, that's 2 skulls, and a single skull. So 2 singles and a double skull, a double black shield, a single white shield, and a double white shield. And a double black shield there. So there's still 6 sides, but you roll 1 die and you might end up with, well, that's not going to help you, but the double skull definitely would. So another rule. There's actually a lot of these, but again, they're designed to make the game just a little more fun, a little more interesting. I don't think I have it here, but there's a color change, a dice color change. So someone in the Twitch chat could cash in the die color change. So for whoever rolls their dice the next time, assuming it's the combat die, are going to get the color change. And so what I did was I took just a block of wood, just one of these like, simulating a 6-sided die. I took one of these and I just colored each side of it a different color, just a flat color. So you had like a red side, a blue side, a black, green, orange, yellow. And so if someone cashes in the color change, we roll that to see what color it is. Let's say it's yellow. So the wizard was about to roll his attack, and so all the white dice in his attack are going to be yellow. Or let's say the orc was going to roll defense, and it turned up orange. So now he's going to roll the orange dice. So there is a fan-made quest out there called Mound of the Beastmen that uses the orange dice, but it uses the old orange dice. So the old orange dice are slightly different than these that I have, because these are like from 2014 or afterward. So the current orange dice have 2 white shields, or double white shield on 2 sides, 2 double skulls, a single black shield, and a double black shield. So if you have the old dice, it may vary. But Mound of the Beastmen was designed with those old ones in mind. So if you play it with the new ones, it may not play exactly the way the author intended, but that's how it goes. But the kind of general rule in HeroQuest is that everybody likes homebrew stuff, but infamously, I can't remember who said it, but they said, well, people don't actually like your homebrew project. What they want is to take your homebrew project and change it and make it their own. So everybody will put a little tweak on it. So, I mean, I've done that myself. I mean, I printed Sheng's potions deck, but I added some of my own. And I kind of modified his suggestions on how to use them. These hero combat cards, I changed those a little bit from what Ron Schertz originally intended. These evil wizard cards, and I modified them slightly from what Sheng wanted. I added some cards. I kind of tweaked the rules for them. The equipment deck, I changed it slightly. So that's what people do. So I don't mind if people take my rules and modify them. I mean, if you're going to distribute them and you were genuinely inspired by how I do things, I appreciate a credit. But if you don't, it's not like I'm going to come after you. I can't really do that. It's all fan made. Now, if you rip me off and sell it, I'm gonna be mad. And I think that's really the line that shouldn't be crossed in the HeroQuest fan community. I mean, Avalon Hill, Hasbro, been very generous. I mean, as far as allowing people to make their own stuff, as long as you're not marketing it as HeroQuest, like it's got to be HeroQuest compatible or it's fan made or homebrew if you're selling it. So that's why you had Sunday Quest, things like that. People had to change it to indicate this is not an official product. This doesn't have the endorsement or support of Hasbro or um, Avalon Hill or whatever. So by the same token, if you're going to just go to somebody's website, download their cards, print them, and then sell them, that's pretty scummy to do. If you're going to just copy and tweak it, it's good to give them credit. I mean, if you completely transformed it so you can't even recognize it, I mean, it's just, but there's a sort of an agreement within the fan community that you don't steal people's stuff, but if you do, you give them credit and at least you don't sell it as if it's your own product. That's really a big no-no. I've seen some people on eBay that do it, and it's really bad. And when you think about it, they're just taking advantage of ignorance because I'm not trying to turn this into a rant, but you can print professional quality cards. It's very simple these days to do this. You don't need, like, I don't have a fancy printer at home like this. This is cardstock. It's got a smooth finish to it. Guess how much this cost me? 50 cents. And yes, that's more expensive than like buying like a deck of bicycle cards from your local gas station. But it's not that much. It's not like the way some of these guys sell their decks of cards on like eBay or Etsy. You're paying like $1.50 for each of these cards. That I think is unreasonable. I can print these myself for 50 cents. And when I say 50 cents, I'm talking about like I maybe printed like 100 cards at once. So you don't have to make big batches of 10,000 and distribute them. In fact, that's a way to draw the attention of Hasbro's lawyers against you. Like, why are you making all this HeroQuest stuff? Are you gonna try to cheat us and infringe our copyright and our intellectual property? So don't do that. It gives the rest of the community a bad name when people do stuff like that. And if you're a fan, you shouldn't support that kind of thing. Like people 3D print stuff, they print stuff, but the best thing to do is to put your stuff out for free. But think about this. If you put your stuff out for free for anyone to use for fun, and then somebody just prints your stuff and sells it and doesn't give you any of the money, that's going to disincline you from creating stuff in the first place, right? And I know, unfortunately, there are people who will take stuff that already exists. Let's say they take this and they just like put a little dot of blue in the corner and then call it their own and sell it. That's pretty scummy too, because you didn't really make any change. You just like did the absolute minimum of change to it, and now you're claiming it as your own. And ignorant people are going to pay whatever you ask online. So don't do it. Don't fall for it. It's not good. So yeah, you can print your own cards, and if you have your own printer, I mean, if you print this stuff, this is what I did initially before I printed this stuff professionally for myself and my friends, because I don't sell these, and I wouldn't because it's not my work. I don't have permission to do that. I would just print it out on paper, just regular old paper, and cut it with the scissors. And so I just have two pieces of paper here. You don't even have to fold it. And you can put a piece of cardstock in between. And guess what? When you put it in one of these plastic sleeves on the table, it looks like a real card. Like unless you examine it very closely and like kind of pick it apart. Oh, this isn't a real card. But I mean, this is a real card. This is a real playing card. You could play it without the sleeve. But I like having the sleeves. It protects them a little bit more. And when you put them in a stack, it all just kind of blends together. Like you tell me, for example, which of these cards are the originals and which are the reprinted ones? Can you tell? I can't. And I'm the one that printed them. But if I look very closely, and see, now I'm giving people hints on how to make their own stuff. Look at these two cards. Obviously, the one on the right is a homebrew. The one on the left is not. How do you tell? Well, there's a copyright 2021 Hasbro. This one, nothing. And why do I do that? This is a pet peeve of mine. When people print their own cards, they will put fake copyright dates on things. First of all, that's misrepresentation. That's false advertising. You are now pretending that Hasbro created that thing, not you. Plus, if you send it to a printer, if I'm a printer and I see that, I'm going to go, Hasbro owns this and is now going to come after me if I allow this to be printed and sold, because now I'm facilitating copyright infringement. I mean, unless they miss it, but they're going to get themselves in big trouble if they do that. So do us all a favor, you folks out there who print your own custom cards, don't put fake copyrights on stuff. I know they probably are just using a template or they want it to match, but I mean, I'm not trying to fool anybody. So I don't mind if the colors are a little off, the size is a little off. I mean, I like to be able to sort the stuff and put it back in the package. See how the colors are different? If you look at this, if you look very closely, you can see this is like a little darker. It's framed a little differently. It's a little bit softer image. The text isn't lined up exactly because I'm not trying to fool people. I'm not trying to create a bootleg and fool somebody. But what I am trying to do is make my homebrew cards look like they fit at the table. But even if they don't, personally me, I don't mind that much, and I don't think my players mind that much either. Like for example, does this figure look like it fits with this one? You could say, gee, it's all shiny, it's got a rim on the end. It's not the same. But on the table, I mean, you just know there's just two different heroes there. Base is a different size, it's got colors, but it's all good. So if you're the type of person that needs everything to match, there's ways to do it without looking like you're trying to cheat somebody. And I think that's the lesson for today. Just wanted to share that. I know we kind of got far afield of house rules. This has been a long video, but I've enjoyed it. I hope that you go ahead and make comments, share what are your favorite house rules, or what are some house rules that you're working on. There's so many things out there as far as rules. I mean, when I was at Gen Con 2023, I saw some really interesting variations. But HeroQuest is the type of game where, yeah, any game can be modified, right? But people, hey, thanks for the support. People will just do what they want to do anyway. But HeroQuest actively encourages you to do these things, to make these things. So I would just say, go ahead, go forth, do your house rules, but don't abuse it. Don't cheat your fellow players. Don't give us a bad name. Just have fun. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Catch us next time on HeroQuest Fans.